Hi, today we would like to talk to you a little bit about indexes. And I'll start by asking Doug, what is an index?
Well, an index could be like the S&P 500 or the Dow Jones Industrial Average. And the Dow Jones Industrial Average was created by Mr. Dow, and he set up basically the industrial stocks of that time as an index, and then pretty much kept them the same. And then it was a way of measuring how the market is doing. And that pretty much is what an index is. It can be set up in different things. So it can be fixed income or bonds. It can be international indexes. It can be small cap stocks, that kind of stuff.
So, how many indexes are there?
Ooh, it's a good question. I don't really know the answer, but the answer is a lot. And you can make up your own indexes. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah, so you could literally set up your own index and follow it. It could be the Sarah White Index of industrial whatevers.
And so how is the index made up then? Are they all the same?
No, they're not. Usually they're either cap weighted or they're not cap weighted. So when most people follow the S&P 500 or the Dow Jones, they're actually following a cap weighted index. And that would be kind of like the House of Representatives. In the House of Representatives, California, a big state, has a lot more representatives than, say, Rhode Island, a small state. So in that situation, the big states have more power in the system than the small states. Well, it's the same thing in the S&P 500. Basically, the big 100 stocks rule the whole index, and the rest of the 400 have very little impact. In fact, they call it the S&P 100 with a tail. Yeah, so the tail just kind of follows along.
So, and then what's the other model?
Well, then the other model would be more like the Senate, and that's equal weighting. So in that case, every state gets the same number. They get 2 senators. So a state like Pennsylvania has 2 senators, and a state like Rhode Island has 2 senators. So now Rhode Island has the same amount of vote as Pennsylvania or California. And so you can actually buy indexes that are equally weighted. So now you spread it out over all of the investments. So you'd have all 500 equally weighted in the S&P 500.
And so you can actually invest in an index just like you can invest in a mutual fund, right?
Correct. And then the question is, do you want it to be cap weighted? And sometimes that's better. And sometimes do you want it to be equally weighted? And sometimes that's better. And that we follow that by the dolly. We can actually tell you for right now, cap weighted is a better way to go. But not that long ago, last year, it was better to be equally weighted. So we can move into the better index. Most people aren't able to follow that, though.
I feel like often when I see indexes referenced, it's also used as a comparison tool for performance, right?
It is. So a lot of times people buy a mutual fund or their portfolio and they'll compare it against the S&P 500. It's not an exact comparison because the indexes don't have the transaction costs, they don't have the turnover, they don't have the management costs that, say, a mutual fund has. So it's not an apples to apples kind of measurement, but it is a way of kind of getting a guideline, but you shouldn't use it as your gospel.
Okay. So is there a big difference then between a mutual fund and an index?
Well, that's the big discussion that's very popular right now. The more popular way to invest right now is called passive investing, and that's basically buying an S&P 500 index, or say you can even buy an overseas one, say the MSCI emerging markets, and you just really hold it and let the index do whatever it does, and you save costs, which is true. But there are periods where active investing actually is a better place to be. So in 2020, you were much better off being in actively managed accounts. And that's where the mutual fund manager buys and sells the stock in either the ETF or the mutual fund. So, one of the big discussions also in this whole argument about passive and active area is there's something called a value trap. And it's becoming quite popular that and it's all theory, but it's a possibility that there could be a value trap in these index funds, in that they're so overweighted and so static that people are buying value thinking it is value and it really isn't, and they could actually end up with a large loss down the road.
So sometimes you really do get what you pay for in terms of if you're paying managers to actively watch out for your investments.
I have a story on this. Everyone will remember the airplane that took off from Queens Airport, and it was basically turning and hit two geese and then went into the Hudson River and everyone lived.
I believe they made a movie about that.
They did. But the key here is, if flying the airplane as a pilot, it's easy to have the autopilot do everything. But when those geese hit the airplane's engines and put it out, do you think the autopilot would have saved the people on the airplane?
Probably not.
Probably not. And that's the same thing. When everything's good, index funds are great. There's no issues. But it's when it's bad, like last March, that you want to be able to you want that pilot there flying the airplane to save the situation. So we're big believers in active investing. We think that's the better way to go.
So that's a little bit of information about the way that we invest here at Charney Investment Group. As always, if you would like more information, please give us a call.
Have a good day.